in the 4th chapter, trying to understand as best as we can intellectually. That which we can understand intellectually, we have an obligation to understand intellectually. That which we have to take on faith, we take on faith. So trying to understand, how is it possible that God is the creator, creating me at this very moment, and at the same time, I'm not perceiving that. I feel independent, when really I'm like a ray of sun within the sun. I'm within my source, within God. How is it that I can feel separate from him? How do we understand that? So we started yesterday the discussion. And we continue. And what is that discussion? Is that God's great quality, what's called Gedula, is the quality of chesed, of giving. It's gratuitous kindness, without limitations, any boundaries. And God, in his giving, what is without boundary? Well, he takes from nothing and he makes something. Right? Not a power that we can have. Not something that we can do. This is God's power, his attribute of the life force that he creates ex nihilo. It's exclusively the praise of God. No created being can do this. Take nothing rather, and create life. Even if all of humanity would get together, they wouldn't be able to create even a wing of a gnat or anything. This attribute of God's benevolence, and benevolence because he is constantly flowing that divine life into all of creation, ex nihilo, something from nothing. That's a kindness. What greater kindness? This attribute of this benevolence, God creating in such a manner, is beyond our capability to understand. It's not within our power and intellect of any creature to comprehend this. Even though we have intelligence, but this attribute is beyond our capability. Because creation, ex nihilo, something from nothing, transcends human experience and human intellect. Right? Everything in this world is cause and effect. There's nothing that we have an instance of something from nothing. Right? There's always something. Even when you take a seed and put it into the ground and it sprouts. Well, you started with a seed. Yeah, it made a fruit-bearing tree. It's a lot more than what that seed began with. But that is still something. So that's somewhat of a metaphor for us to understand, but really, it's beyond comprehension. This is the divine attribute of Gedula. Now, it's a divine attribute. Why can't we understand it? Because ultimately, this divine attribute is one with God himself. As we learn, the God, he and his attributes are one. So just as it's impossible to understand God, the essence of God, likewise his attributes that are one with him is beyond our comprehension. So we can't get this divine benevolence of God as his nature of good to do good, and the doing of good is the act of creation. The act of creation is the goodness. So just as it's impossible for us to appreciate and understand that, likewise it's also impossible for another divine attribute, which is Gvura, the attribute of might, God's might. There's benevolence and God's might, or restraint. That's what Gvura. Meaning, tzimtzum, contraction, holding back, the restraining force of the life flow of the attribute of God's Gedula, of his benevolence. In other words, preventing. from this light descending upon and manifesting itself in creation, in creatures, in you and I. Meaning that the life force of God that is animating is being held back, that activating force that's within us, and it's being concealed. It's being concealed. That's what Gevura is, to enable to restrain, hold back. Hold back what? The light of God that is creating us something from nothing every moment. For the life force conceals itself in us, in the body of our being. What does it do then? It makes it appear that we're independent existence, as if we're not like a ray of light within the sun, but like we are a ray that is outside of the sun. Independent existence. Although in reality, we have no independence. We have no, our being, our choice, we have independence. Right? In choice we have, but choice is not being, is not your the space you take up, right? That's not a space, choice, will. That's already abstract. So we're not going there. We're going into the fact of me existing, taking up space that seems to be independent of God. Right? Like the ray of light that diffuses itself from the sun. So likewise, I'm that ray of light that is diffused from God. Yeah, absolutely from God, diffused, but hey, I'm also something. It's that power of restraint, Gvura of the Almighty, that gives us that perception that we do feel, not that we're nullified. So what we have over here, that God has the power to, his omnipotent power is the ability to bring forth light, to bestow life from nothingness, to make something, and also his ability to conceal that very same light and that life force that he creates, that it should be concealed from us and that we should not perceive the fact that we are a ray of light within the sun. And because if we did, we'd be nullified out of existence, just like the ray of light within the sun has no identity, so to speak. This is something we can't comprehend either, the essential nature of this concealment. Just as we can't comprehend the creative power of the flow of divinity that creates us, so likewise we can't understand the restraint power. Right? We can understand in human terms, which we're actually going to get to later. But in divine terms, no. So, let's unpack this a bit. Let's understand this a little more deeply. So the first thing that I think would be a beautiful take home is, think about it, God's goodness in your life. Where is that? Sometimes you question. You're going through a lot of suffering. You're going through difficult, painful situations, whether with health, materially, or maybe in family matters. So you're wondering, where's God's kindness? And sometimes it seems to be a good question. But what we've learned today, God's kindness, is in the very fact that I am this very moment, being created by his loving kindness, from nothingness to something, from nothing to something. Is there a greater kindness than that, of just the fact that we are? What's the problem, of course, is that we take this for granted. Because I was yesterday, and I was the day before, and I always was since I've been brought into this world. Kindness, we make a mistake in thinking that it has to be something novel that I've been given. Oh, I want this because I don't have it, and therefore it's novel in my life. And God, hey, you're omnipotent. You can make it happen. So this is the mistake that we make. We're looking for, we're looking for the novelty. We're looking for something more. What more is there than the breath of that we take this moment? And yes, take for granted, yes, but it's more than just taking for granted. The reality is that God's creating me out of his benevolence, his loving kindness, out of nothingness this very moment. But I don't perceive that. I don't see that. Loving kindness is, something that you perceive. Well, that's why the Alter Rebbe is trying to teach us now. Take a look. Let's take a moment even to meditate on that for a moment. Let's take a moment and meditate on this. The breath of life that you're just breathing in now, breathe it in, is God's vitality that he just created you that moment, this moment, out of nothingness. Try to picture that. Make it visceral. Make it real. It's true. It's absolutely true. That this moment is a God-given Kodak moment of just the fact that I exist. Not because I exist with things in my life, that just I exist. Not that I exist and I have health and I have material things. I have, family and friends and relationships that are wonderful. That's already another layer. You can't get to that layer. You can't get there if you don't first make real for you God's loving kindness in the breath of life that he gives us, that he breathes into us. The divine energy that he animates us every moment. In TRC, we're learning how to make that real. In the Tanya Rabbi community. We did that last night, and we continue. I'll give you a little bit over here. Here it becomes an intellectual understanding in Bina, but we want to make it real. We want to make it that it lives in me. It breathes in me. It oozes out of every pore in me. That's taking Tanya, learning to live. Not just learning and being inspired and then, we move on. Being coached and guided. And that's where we're going. So I invite you again to come and participate. Try it out. Laurie has a question. I understand my existence is a kindness and a gift. What is death? Good question, Laurie. Um, Let me ask you. Good question, Laurie. Um, are you still a being when you die? Are you? Of course you are. Oh, so if you're a being, that means God is creating you. Just like God creates angels and he creates souls, so he's creating souls after death. Those souls appreciate it a little more than we do, but it's still God's loving kindness that he's creating the soul, giving it existence. It's not physical existence, but not all existence is physical. So God is still in his loving kindness. Before there was a soul, what was there? Nothing, just God. Not God and, not God plus, just God. In that sense, it's nothingness in the sense that it's beyond our cognition, our awareness, understanding, beyond any experience. Oh, now there's a soul. Okay. I hope that helps you, Laurie. Good question. All right, powerful stuff. For powerful people. We're all very powerful. I actually have to end the class now. Rambam is coming up next. It's going to start in about 10-15 minutes. I'm going to be doing it from my home instead of here. So just give a few minutes of time that I can get to it. And again, just a reminder of joining. Try the. I have a goal, and I've enlisted some people to help me with that goal. To get to 50 students for Gimel Tammuz, for the third of Tammuz, the Rebbe's yahrzeit, to give as a gift. So please be a partner in that gift. Be a partner in that gift. It's a gift of life, of learning to live. We're learning now, but to make it that it's going to be living and breathing in us, join the TRC. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you, Tanya. Have a wonderful, great day.